The ships appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's orbital sensors showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. The next moment, 300 vessels materialized above the planet. They were massive, each one dwarfing humanity's largest space stations. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to drink in the light of the sun. Captain James Miller stood in the command center of Earth's defense station, his jaw tight as he watched the display screens. Around him, dozens of officers stared in silence at the impossible sight. "Sir," Commander Tom Blake said quietly, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Miller ordered. The face that appeared on the screens was not human. High Chancellor Vorn had skin like polished obsidian and 4 eyes that glowed with amber light. When he spoke, translation software rendered his words in every language on Earth simultaneously. "Humans of Earth," Vorn began. His voice carried the weight of ages. "I am High Chancellor Vorn of the Galactic Council. We have governed this galaxy for 12,000 of your years. We maintain order among 847 species. Today, we welcome you to that order." Ambassador Lisa Wong watched the broadcast from the United Nations chamber in Geneva. Something in Vorn's tone made her hands grip the armrests of her chair. "You are classified as a Level 3 servitor species," Vorn continued. "This is determined by your technological development, your military capability, and your resource value. As a servitor species, you will provide 30% of all planetary resources to the Council. You will accept Council representatives to govern your world. You will contribute citizens to serve in Council facilities across the galaxy." Miller felt his blood run cold. This wasn't first contact. This was conquest with paperwork. "You have 48 hours to transmit your acceptance," Vorn said. "Compliance will be rewarded with protection and prosperity." Resistance. He paused, and something like pity crossed his alien features. "Resistance has never ended well. I have witnessed the fate of 17 species who refused the Council's mercy. Their worlds are now monuments to foolish pride." The transmission ended. For 3 seconds, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Then the screening began. Ambassador Wong found herself in an emergency session 12 hours later. Leaders from every nation crowded into the secure facility, their faces pale with fear or red with anger. "We have to negotiate," the Secretary General insisted. 30% is better than total destruction." 30% this year, Miller said from his seat at the military table. "What about next year? These creatures don't see us as equals. They see us as property. And what choice do we have?" Someone shouted, "Did you see those ships? We have 6 orbital defense platforms and a handful of military vessels. They have 300 warships that can appear from nowhere." Wang stood slowly. "We need more information. Let me try to establish a dialogue." The request was granted. 6 hours later, Vorn appeared on the screens again, this time for a private transmission. "Ambassador," he said, almost warmly, "I hope you are calling to deliver your world's submission." "I'm calling to understand," Wang replied carefully. "You say 847 species serve the Council. Did all of them choose this freely?" Vorn's laugh was like grinding stone. "Choice is a luxury, Ambassador. The universe is not kind to the weak. Every species we govern is alive because they understood this truth. Let me show you what happens to those who do not." The holographic display activated. Wang watched in horror as planetary surfaces burned under orbital bombardment. Cities turned to glass. Oceans boiled away. Vorn showed her world after world, each one a graveyard. "The Kellner chose pride over survival," Vorn said. "They had technology almost as advanced as yours. They lasted 3 weeks. The Trin were warriors, fierce and brave. They lasted 2 months. The longest resistance in galactic history was the Vorox. They held out for nearly a year. He leaned forward. All of them are dust now, Ambassador. Dust and memory. Why? Wang asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why do this? Because order must be maintained, Vorn replied. Because the galaxy needs structure. Because 847 species live in peace under our guidance. A few sparks of rebellion are a small price for stability. His eyes gleamed. Resistance is not brave, human. It is merely stupid. The transmission ended. Wang sat in silence for a long time. Then she made her way to the military bunker where Captain Miller and his staff were working. How bad is it? She asked. Miller looked up from a tactical display. Honestly? We'd lose. Their weapons can crack a planet in half. Our biggest guns would barely scratch their shields. Commander Blake stepped forward. But they don't know everything about us. What do you mean? Wang asked. Blake pulled up historical data on a screen. Every species they've conquered. They were united when the Council arrived. Single governments. Clear hierarchies. They understood the concept of kneeling because their own societies had rulers and subjects. And? Wang prompted. And we're different, Miller said quietly. Humans don't have a history of kneeling. We have a history of fighting. Ice ages didn't kill us. Plagues didn't kill us. We've had weapons that could destroy our own world for over a century. And we're still here. He looked at Wang. Every human alive today is descended from someone who survived something impossible. That doesn't change the fact that we're outgunned. Wang said. No, Miller agreed. But it means we won't make it easy for them. The 48 hours ticked down. Earth's governments argued. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight. Most simply wanted the nightmare to end. With 1 hour remaining, Ambassador Wang stood before a camera. The broadcast would reach every screen on Earth and transmit to the Council mothership in orbit. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. High Chancellor Vorn, she began, we have considered your demand carefully. We have reviewed the history you showed us. We understand the power you wield and the fate that awaits those who refuse you. Across the planet, billions watched. In the command center, Miller stood with his officers, ready for whatever came next. Wang took a breath. Here is our answer. No. The word echoed across the solar system. We will not kneel, Wang continued. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not become your servants. If you want this world, you will have to take it. And we promise you this. We will make you regret every moment of that battle. On the Council mothership, High Chancellor Vorn stared at the transmission in genuine shock. In 12,000 years, no species had ever refused so clearly, so absolutely. He activated the ship's weapon systems. So be it, he whispered. Asterisk? The Council fleet opened fire exactly 3 minutes after Ambassador Wang's broadcast ended. Captain James Miller watched from the command deck as brilliant lances of energy erupted from the alien warships. The first target was Defense Platform 7, humanity's largest orbital station. The beam hit with surgical precision. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire platform exploded in a flash of white light. 3,000 people died in an instant. All ships execute pattern Delta, Miller ordered, his voice cold and controlled. Do not engage directly. Scatter and observe. Around Earth, humanity's fleet broke formation. 60 warships, small and outdated compared to the Council vessels, burned hard in different directions. The Council ships tracked them with lazy confidence. Like cats watching mice. Commander Blake stood beside Miller, his hands gripping the console. They're not even trying hard. They think this is already over. Good, Miller said quietly. Let them think that. Asterisk, the second wave of Council fire destroyed 2 more human ships. The aliens moved with the efficiency of predators, who had done this 1,000 times before. Their formations were perfect, their targeting flawless. They had conquered 847 species with these tactics, but they had never fought humans before. All ships. Activate the swarm, Miller commanded. Deep in Earth's orbital facilities, bay doors opened. What emerged was not a traditional military fleet. Instead, thousands upon thousands of small craft poured into space like angry insects. Each one was barely larger than an old fighter jet. Each one was automated, cheap, and expendable. Asterisk. And there were 10,000 of them dot high. Chancellor Vorn watched the swarm deploy with something approaching confusion. "What is this?" he muttered. "These craft have no shields, no significant weapons. Are the humans sending us targets?" His tactical officer studied the readings. "Chancellor, they are too small and too numerous for our main weapons to target efficiently. Our systems are designed for capital ship combat." "Then use point defense systems," Vorn ordered. "Sweep them away." The council ships opened up with smaller weapons, and hundreds of human drones exploded in rapid succession. But for every 10 destroyed, 90 kept coming. They swarmed around the council vessels like gnats, forcing the aliens to waste energy and ammunition on insignificant targets. "Now," Miller said, "hidden among the drone swarm were humanity's real weapons. 50 manned strike craft, their signatures masked by the chaos, broke formation and accelerated toward the council ships. Each one carried a single payload, not a traditional missile, but something humans had invented in their violent history. Nuclear weapons, dozens of them, crude, brutal, and effective. The first strike craft reached a council destroyer. The pilot, a woman named Rachel Park, armed her payload and ejected at the last second. Her ship, loaded with 6 fusion warheads, slammed into the destroyer's hull at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion was spectacular. The destroyer's shields, designed to deflect energy beams, did nothing against the raw kinetic impact. The warheads detonated in sequence, and the council ship's hull cracked like an egg. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions rippled through the vessel dot. The destroyer went dark and began tumbling out of formation. On the council flagship, alarms blared for the first time in centuries. Vorn stared at his displays in disbelief. "How? Our shields are impenetrable." "Against energy weapons, yes," his officer replied, his voice shaking. "But the humans are using kinetic impact and primitive atomic explosions. Our shields were not calibrated for such crude tactics." Vorn's expression hardened. "Adjust shields. Destroy every human craft. Show them the price of resistance." The council fleet regrouped and unleashed devastation. Human ships died by the dozens. Strike craft disintegrated under focused fire. The drone swarm was cut down in waves. Earth's defense platforms fell one by one, each explosion a wound in humanity's hope. But the humans kept coming. Commander Blake monitored casualty reports, his face ashen. "We've lost 40% of the fleet. Casualty estimates are over 15,000. "And them?" Miller asked. 7 ships damaged, 1 destroyed. The numbers were brutal. For every council ship humanity scratched, thousands of humans died. It was a mathematics of annihilation. "Pull back the remaining fleet to Mars orbit," Miller ordered. "We need to regroup." As the surviving human ships retreated, Vorn allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. As expected, they fought with courage. I will grant them that. But courage means nothing against superior force. Pursue them. We will finish this at their colony world. The council fleet followed, confident in their inevitable victory. They did not notice the 16 human ships that had broken away during the chaos. Ships that were now burning hard toward the asteroid belt dot in the command bunker on Earth. Ambassador Wong watched the battle reports with tears streaming down her face. "So many dead," she whispered. "Was I wrong? Should we have surrendered?" An older man, General David Stone, put a hand on her shoulder. "If we had knelt, we would have died anyway, just slower. At least this way, we die on our feet." "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions. Not from the Council, from other sources." "What sources?" Stone asked. The officer looked confused. "Unknown. But they're coming from multiple points across the galaxy. The encryption is primitive, like someone is trying to send messages without the Council noticing." Wang stepped forward. "Play them." The first message appeared on screen. The speaker was an alien, its features reptilian and scarred. It spoke in broken English, clearly using old translation software. "Humans of Earth," the creature said. "I am Krell of the Servitor Species Designation 773. My people have served the Council for 600 years. We watched your broadcast. We watched you say no." The creature's eyes gleamed with something that might have been hope. "In 600 years, no one has said no. We had forgotten that word existed." More messages flooded in. Species after species, all speaking in hushed tones, all sending their transmissions through back channels and hidden networks. "This is Vera of Species 409. We remember freedom. Your battle reminds us. This is Tom of Species 226. A Council tells us resistance is impossible. You are proving them wrong. This is Nira of Species 688. Keep fighting. Please keep fighting. Show the galaxy that the Council can bleed." Wang stared at the messages, her eyes wide. "They're all watching us. Every servitor species in the galaxy is watching. And some of them are doing more than watching," Stone said, pulling up new tactical data. "We're detecting unusual activity in Council territory. Reports of equipment failures, communication disruptions, missing supply shipments. Nothing major, but it's starting," Wang finished. "Small acts of rebellion, sabotage. In the asteroid belt, Captain Miller's secret detachment reached their destination. The belt was home to humanity's mining operations, and more importantly, it was full of rocks. Lots of rocks. Some of them quite large. "Begin Operation Slingshot," Miller ordered. The human ships positioned themselves around a massive asteroid, nearly a kilometer wide. Using mining equipment and jury-rigged engines, they began to push. Slowly at first, then faster. The asteroid started to move. They aimed it toward the Council fleet's projected path. Meanwhile, at Mars, the Council ships caught up with the retreating human vessels. Vorn prepared to deliver the final blow, to end this irritating resistance once and for all. "Target their colony," he ordered. "Let them watch their future turn to ash." The Council flagship's main weapon charged. It was a planet killer, capable of shattering moons. Against a small colony dome on Mars, it would be absolute. The weapon fired, but the human ships didn't try to block it. Instead, they scattered at the last second. The beam struck Mars exactly where the colony had been, except the colony wasn't there anymore. "What?" Orn leaned forward, confusion crossing his features. His tactical officer quickly analyzed the data. "Chancellor, the colony was evacuated. The structures we're seeing are decoys. The real colony has been moved underground, beneath the polar ice cap." For the first time, Vorn felt a flicker of doubt. These humans were not fighting like the species he had conquered before. They were unpredictable, wasteful. They threw away lives and resources on tactics that made no sense. And somehow, impossibly, they were still fighting. "Sir," his officer said urgently, "sensors detect a large mass approaching at high velocity. The asteroid hit the Council formation like the fist of an angry god. 3 ships were completely destroyed in the impact. 5 more were heavily damaged as debris tore through their formations. The entire fleet was thrown into chaos as they scrambled to avoid the deadly rain of rock and metal. In that moment of confusion, the human fleet struck again. Miller's remaining ships emerged from Mars's shadow, weapons blazing. They targeted the damaged vessels, exploiting every weakness. Nuclear warheads detonated against cracked hulls. Kinetic rounds punched through compromised shields. 2 more. Council ships went dark. The Battle of Mars raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the Council fleet retreated to regroup. They had won in terms of numbers. Humanity had lost 70% of its fleet. But they had not won the crushing victory they expected. And across the galaxy, on 847 worlds, servitor species watched the reports in stunned silence. The humans had drawn blood. On the Council flagship, High Chancellor Vorn stared at the damage reports. 10 ships lost or crippled. Thousands of Council soldiers dead. Against a primitive species that should have been crushed in hours. Prepare for a full assault on Earth, he ordered, his voice cold with fury. No more measured response. We will turn their whole world into a warning that will echo for 10,000 years. But as the Council fleet prepared for genocide, something was happening in the shadows of the galaxy. On distant worlds in hidden facilities, among the forgotten and the enslaved, a spark had been lit. The humans had shown that the Council could be hurt. And if they could be hurt, perhaps they could be beaten. Asterisk. The Council armada that approached Earth 3 weeks later was 5 times larger than the first fleet. High Chancellor Vorn had called in reinforcements from across the galaxy. 2,000 warships now hung in space above humanity's homeworld, blotting out the stars. Captain James Miller stood in what remained of Earth's command center, his uniform torn and stained with soot. The past weeks had been brutal. Constant skirmishes, evacuations, losses that made his chest ache every time he reviewed the casualty lists. "This is it," Commander Blake said quietly. "They're going to end us." Miller nodded slowly. They had maybe 50 functional ships left. A few thousand drones. Some orbital mines. Against 2,000 Council warships, it was nothing. "Captain," a communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission. It's not from the Council." "Put it through," Miller ordered. The face that appeared on screen was alien, but somehow familiar. Krell, the reptilian creature who had sent the first message of support weeks ago. "Humans," Krell said, his voice urgent. "We cannot let you fight alone anymore. My people have seized 3 supply depots in our sector. We are sending you coordinates and access codes." Before Miller could respond, another transmission came through. Then another. And another. Species after species, all across the galaxy, were revealing themselves. "This is Vera. My people have sabotaged the Council fuel processing station in Sector 9. Their ships there are stranded. This is Tom. We have taken control of the communication relay in our system. The Council cannot coordinate their forces here. This is Nira. We are fighting. Finally, after all these years, we are fighting." Ambassador Wang entered the command center, her eyes wide. "It's happening everywhere. Intelligence reports are coming in from across the galaxy. Uprisings, rebellions, sabotage. The servitor species are rising up." General Stone pulled up a galactic map. Red dots appeared across it, each one representing an act of resistance. There were dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They were waiting, Stone said with wonder in his voice. All these species, all these years. They were just waiting for someone to show them it was possible. High Chancellor Vorn saw the same reports on his flagship. His 4 eyes blazed with fury as he watched his empire begin to crumble. 847 species, all rebelling at once. It was chaos. It was madness. It was the end of everything he had built. "Destroy Earth," he commanded. Destroy it now. We will make an example that will end this rebellion before it spreads further. But even as he gave the order, more reports flooded in. Council garrison forces were being overwhelmed. Supply lines were collapsing. Ships were defecting. Some servitor species had hidden military forces for generations. Waiting for this exact moment, the galaxy was burning, and Earth had lit the match. "Chancellor," his tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "we're detecting multiple fleet movements converging on this position. The servitor species are sending ships. How many ships could they possibly have?" Vorn demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "Preliminary scans detect at least 8,000 vessels. They are old, poorly armed, but they are coming." Vorn stared at the tactical display in disbelief. For 12,000 years, the Council had maintained order through fear and overwhelming force. They had never imagined that the servitor species might work together, that they might coordinate, that they might have been preparing for this day in secret. The first Allied fleet arrived within hours. Ships from a dozen different species, all converging on Earth. They were a ragtag collection mining vessels retrofitted with weapons, cargo haulers carrying troops, ancient warships that had been hidden in asteroid fields for centuries. They were beautiful. Miller watched them arrive with tears in his eyes. "We're not alone," he whispered. Krell's voice came through the communication system. "We stand with Earth. We stand for freedom." The battle that followed would be remembered for 10,000 years. The Council fleet was superior in technology and firepower, but they were outnumbered and fighting on too many fronts. The Allied forces used tactics learned from watching humanity fight unpredictable, wasteful, and devastatingly effective. Vera's people specialized in electronic warfare. They crashed Council targeting systems and filled their sensors with false readings. Tone species were expert miners who knew how to use explosives. They detonated charges that sent asteroids tumbling into Council formations. Neera's people were warriors who had been forbidden to fight for 600 years. They boarded Council ships with a fury that shocked even the humans. And through it all, Captain Miller coordinated the defense of Earth with a skill born of desperation and determination. The battle raged for 2 days. Ships burned. Soldiers died. The space around Earth became a graveyard of metal and fire. But slowly, impossibly, the Council fleet began to fall back. Vorn watched his forces crumble with cold horror. This was not how it was supposed to end. The Council was eternal. The Council was inevitable. The Council was order itself. But order, he was learning, could be broken. "Chancellor," his officer said quietly, "we must retreat. If we stay, we will lose the entire fleet." Vorn wanted to refuse, wanted to fight until every last Council ship was destroyed. But he was not a fool. He had lost. Not just this battle, but the war, the Empire, everything. "All ships," he said, his voice hollow. "Withdraw." The Council fleet jumped faster than light travel and vanished, leaving the Allied forces victorious. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, across 1,000 ships and 1 billion communication channels, the celebration began. On Earth, people poured into the streets, weeping and laughing and holding each other. They had survived. Against all odds, against the most powerful empire in the galaxy, they had survived. Ambassador Wang stood on the steps of the United Nations building, watching the celebrations. Captain Miller joined her, his uniform still smelling of smoke and battle. "What happens now?" Miller asked. Wang smiled, tired but hopeful. "Now we build something new. A galaxy where species stand together as equals, where no one is forced to kneel." "The Council won't give up easily," Miller warned. "They still control hundreds of systems. They still have thousands of ships. But they don't control the galaxy anymore," Wang replied. The servitor species have tasted freedom. Some of them will be crushed. Some will fail. But enough will succeed. Enough will remember that they don't have to be slaves. Over the following months, the Galactic Council's empire collapsed. Some species won their independence through battle. Others through negotiation. Some council members even defected, tired of the endless war to maintain control. A new organization emerged from the chaos. The Free Species Alliance. It had no supreme ruler, no servitor classes. Every species had an equal vote. Every world had the right to govern itself. It was messy. It was inefficient. It was constantly arguing and debating and changing. It was freedom. High Chancellor Vorn watched the transformation from exile on a remote moon. His power was gone. His empire was dust. He had lived for 8 centuries, and he had seen civilizations rise and fall, but he had never seen anything like humanity. They had not been the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but they had possessed something the galaxy had forgotten, the absolute refusal to accept oppression, and that refusal had changed everything. Years later, Ambassador Wang stood before the first official gathering of the Free Species Alliance. Representatives from 200 species filled the chamber. More would join in time. We are here today because one word changed the galaxy. Wang began. That word was no. We said no to oppression, no to servitude, no to the idea that might makes right. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from 100 different worlds. We did not win because we were strong. We won because we refused to lose. Because we showed the galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for. Krell stood and spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber. My people were slaves for 600 years. We had forgotten what it meant to be free. The humans reminded us. They paid for that reminder with blood and sacrifice. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid. Other voices joined in, species after species, all telling the same story. They had been beaten down, controlled, dominated, but they had never truly surrendered. They had waited, hoped, endured. And when humanity stood up and said no, they had found the courage to stand as well. Captain Miller, now promoted to admiral, watched the proceedings from Earth. He thought about the thousands who had died in the war, the ships that had burned, the worlds that had suffered. The price of freedom had been terrible, but as he watched former slaves debate as equals, as he saw species from across the galaxy working together instead of serving a master, he knew the price had been worth it. His communication console chimed. It was a message from a distant system. A new species had just made contact with the Free Species Alliance. They had heard the story of Earth, the story of the species that refused to kneel. They wanted to join. Not as servants. As partners, Miller smiled and approved the welcoming committee. The galaxy was still dangerous. The remnants of the council still fought in some sectors. Pirates and warlords filled power vacuums. There were conflicts and problems that would take generations to solve, but for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy had a choice. On Earth, in the archives of the new alliance, they kept a recording. It was Ambassador Wang's broadcast, the moment she had spoken for all humanity and said the word that changed everything. No. One word. 2 letters. It had seemed so small at the time, but it had shaken the galaxy to its foundation, and it had taught the universe a lesson that would echo through the ages. There are some species that cannot be made to kneel, some spirits that cannot be broken, some fires that burn too bright to ever be extinguished. Humanity had been one of those species, and they had shown the galaxy what freedom truly meant. The end asterisk.